Who's the most disturbing person you've ever met in real life? Story 1. I had two roommates in college. I was not particularly close to either of them, but we came from the same town. One of them had a younger brother, and she asked me if he could spend the night on our couch for a night or two. Not great, but I did not complain. I cannot explain it, but he was so unsettling. There was a lifelessness to his eyes, and he hardly spoke. I was very glad when he was gone. A few years later, I found out how unsettling he really was. Apparently, his parents asked him to leave because he had been taking things from them, but he came back and made a hiding place in the garage and would stay there. I guess he cleared it up during the day because they had no idea how long he was doing that. Anyway, he entered the house next door. Simple burglary would be bad enough, but no. He stayed for hours and waited for the woman who lived there to come home. He harmed her with an axe. He was caught not long after, driving her car. He was executed a few years later. The whole story really was not a surprise. He was the most harmful person I have ever been next to, and I knew something was wrong about him long before it happened. Story 2. A man used to follow me home from school when I was 15. He made my skin crawl, and I always made sure I was never alone because he would be waiting at the bus stop no matter what time I passed it, even if I had detention. He would just stand there until I walked past, then walk behind me very closely all the way home, occasionally calling me pretty or asking if he could take me out. Thank goodness for my mates being extra protective, because when I was 18, he was convicted of the fatal harm of a 17-year-old girl he had been seeing, who, when the picture was printed in the paper, was eerily very similar looking to me. Story 3. I had to walk to the local elementary school to pick up my sister. The school was several blocks away, and this unsettling guy had followed me in his car a few times. But this time I had my baby sister. She was 5. I tried hiding from him going through yards, empty lots, and thought we lost him. We reached our house, but the guy had followed us to our house. I ran in with my sister and ran into my father. I cried that a man had followed me and my sister. My dad is a small man, but holy wow. He threw open the front door, ran to the front, and jumped on the guy's car. My father never used the word freaking in front of us kids or my mother. I heard him say, if you ever come near my daughter's home, he would seriously hurt him. The neighbors watched this and asked my dad what was going on. My father told them that this guy stalked us, my sister and I. The neighbors held this guy while the police showed up. Turns out this guy followed several girls from the elementary school. I was glad that my dad just happened to come home early. I do not know if I would have told him. Story 4. I used to work in the law courts and saw plenty of interesting and not very nice characters. Had to sit in on a few awful inquests. Had to sit in on an absolutely awful person who was charged with shaking his ex-girlfriend's baby until the brain damage was so severe it passed away. But there is one kid that sticks with me. Mondays were allocated for children's court, usually teenage kids appearing for things like theft, vandalism, and so on. A lot of these kids were quite clearly from backgrounds of low income and neglect. This kid turned up in a private school uniform, blazer tie, and polished shoes with his parents that were dressed immaculately. The school on the kid's uniform was a very prestigious one with extremely high fees. He looked no older than 16, blonde, baby-faced with glasses. Looked entirely out of place amongst the scruffy other teens in their tracksuits. I was inside the courtroom when this kid appeared, and just wow. The other kids that morning had been charged with things like shoplifting. A few were in trouble for graffiti and so on. This kid, who looked so innocent and quiet, had attempted to force himself on not one, but 2 girls at a school camp. He had waited until everyone was asleep, and then when the first girl had left her shared room to go to the bathrooms down the hall, he had dragged her into a cupboard and assaulted her. She had managed to fight him off and then run away to wake a teacher. The teacher found him with his hands around the throat of the second girl. Story 5. When I worked in a supermarket as a cashier, there was one regular customer who looked and behaved like the picture you would see in a dictionary next to the word pervert. You know how they always say most predators look like nice everyday people? He did not. He always made a point to come through my till and tell me I was pretty, or ask if I had a boyfriend, hinting that he would like to do things to me if he were my boyfriend. After I had served him, he would just stand at the end of my till and stare at me. Sometimes he would stand outside the plate glass windows at the front and stare at me. Just to put some extra unsettling context on it, I was 19 at the time, but I was often mistaken for being much, much younger. I told management, but of course they would not do anything about it because they only had my word. Then he started following one of the female managers around the supermarket and was promptly banned. One time he was outside staring at me again, and one of the other cashiers recognized him as a man who lived on her road. He had recently been released from prison, where he had been serving time for harming his own daughter. Story 6. I spent a year couch surfing after I got kicked out at 19. One place I ended up was an acquaintance of mine's nearly condemned trailer, and this place really attracted some scum of the town. Unfortunately, I had no other place to stay at the time. I had a 2-liter of my soda in the back of the fridge, put my name on it, and please do not touch written on it. As silly as it sounds, it was a comfort to me to have just one thing that was mine, and also a treat that I would sip on whenever I needed just a little escape. I did not mind if my roomies drank it really, but the main guy of this place always had people over that were complete strangers or weirdos to me, and I did not want them drinking my soda, especially straight out of the bottle. I woke up one day to basically half a cup of soda left in the bottle. It had been nearly full the night before. I got sad and asked, "Hey, who drank my Dr. Pepper?" Everyone told me it was this guy that I will call KT. KT was a very strange kid. He was either my age or a year younger than me, and had kind of a bad reputation for stealing drugs and all kinds of things. I did not confront him because frankly he freaked me out, and I came to the conclusion that it was not worth further discomfort over some Dr. Pepper. A few weeks later, KT's best friend, I will call him C, went missing during our county fair. C was a great kid, good friends with my brother, and got along with everyone. KT was going around town bragging that C was dead and that he was responsible. It turned out to be true. KT harmed C over drugs and about $300. His body was found chopped up and burned in the woods not far out of town. The fact that I was in the presence of this kid only about a month before he harmed his own best friend still keeps me up at night. Our town misses C a lot, and there has been a lot of violence here since then. KT will thankfully spend the rest of his life in prison, along with 3 accomplices. Story 7. In college, I lived out in the country in a boarding house with other girls. The landlords drove us into town to drop us off or pick us up. This one time there was a guy in the van. I sat next to him. Everything seemed normal. They dropped him off at his house before going home. That night, Mrs. Landlord told us about the guy in the van. Nice guy when he is sober. She told us a story about how, when drunk, he tried to assault a 13-year-old girl. She locked herself in a garden shed. He waited outside all night for her to come out so he could attack her, which he did. He was well known for being harmful while drunk. And I was horrified that they gave him a ride home, and I sat next to him. Never saw him again. I moved out before the school year was over, due to other questionable choices by Mrs. Landlord. Story 8. My ex-husband. He had the mindset of an incel towards me and all women. He constantly made comments and critiqued women's bodies. It was as if we were put there only to serve his needs. No matter what he got, it was never enough. I tried and tried. He pressured me into doing some intimate things that I was not comfortable with. Then he was upset that I was not enjoying the act he knew I was uncomfortable with. It was constant pressure. He told me a lot that I owed him, but it was never the other way around. I wanted a partner to build a life together that was better than the poverty that he grew up in. He had a middle-class life with me for the first time, but that was not good enough. He wanted someone he could dominate and own. The last straw was him deciding that since I could not meet his intimate needs, I needed to agree to allow him to just randomly sleep with women and then come home to me. I obviously objected to this, and I was disgusted that he called himself a Christian but wanted permission to commit adultery. He eventually wore me down by asking constantly and then refusing to speak to me when I said no. He would make margaritas and offer me one so he could ask me when I was drunk. I was a happy and agreeable drunk. One night I just broke and said, "Okay, go ahead." He asked me to say, "Just go ahead and have fun." So I did, but I added that I did not want to know anything about it. And I said this would not work out the way he thought it would. Long story short, I discovered that he was trashing me online in his advertisements to get random women to meet him, to have intimacy with him for free. He made fun of me and let it be known that his wife could not satisfy him and that being with me was like being with a blow-up doll. He chose to be cruel to me to strangers. That stuck with me, and I knew I was done. When I left, he first tried love bombing and begging. He said he was not even successful with his ads, so he had not done anything wrong and did not cheat. Suddenly, I was his everything, and he would change. He mailed my parents a letter apologizing for what he did to me, but he also said that he had idolized me and that I had led him away from God. When I did not budge, he got mean. Through a text, he said that he did not want to use this, but that I had forced him to. Then he sent me a recording of our conversation when I agreed to let him cheat. This was his proof that I agreed to all of this, and I should come back because he had not done anything wrong. At that moment, I knew he was a very disturbed person. He made our divorce extremely hard and fought it all the way. I was forced to attend court-ordered counseling with him. When he knew it was over, the final twist of the knife came. He printed out embarrassing conversations between us over Facebook Messenger of us talking and joking about intimacy. He mailed those to my parents to humiliate me. That was over 10 years ago. He is still single and lives with his sister and her husband in their home. He made the local news 2 years ago for threatening to harm local government officials over Facebook while he was drunk. The Federal Bureau of Investigation searched his house and confiscated his guns. He pled to a lesser misdemeanor charge of harassment in order to get the felony threat of terrorism charge dropped. He is also not allowed to own guns anymore and had to give a deoxyribonucleic acid sample. He was a gun nut, so I love that for him. I am in a stable 5-year relationship with a wonderful man who is my best friend and partner. He makes me so happy and treats me with respect. He is the best thing to happen to me. We live a great middle-class life and hope to have kids someday. Story 9. My ex would talk about his traumatizing stories in Afghanistan and have night terrors. Found out from his ex-wife who he cheated on with me, and I found that out later that he was only ever deployed to Japan. He gloated about this stuff to actual veterans who were in Afghanistan. Also the guy that approached me at my job offering for me to model for him and to go on a road trip where he would pay for me and him. Edit my ex did way more than just this. I truly believe he was at the very least a narcissist. It was an emotionally abusive relationship. He cheated on his wife with me, which I found out later. He told me she was a crazy lesbian. She is not. She is quite lovely. He would apparently gloat about being with 2 lesbian women or some stuff. He also lied about knowing the guy who assaulted me and that he would beat him up. Both were military. My family has lots of military people, so my mom knows how to fold the flag for funerals. He offered to do it while talking about how he had, unfortunately, had to do this for too many men. My mom fixed the flag because he did it wrong. His big thing was being with virgins. So after all his big talk of us being in love, he eventually ghosted me, and I went to his place where I saw another woman behind him. I slapped him, if that helps. As for stories, I really enjoy the song Pet by Perfect Circle. He would talk about how he played the song, and his sergeant told him to shoot those people. It was something like that. Told me about how either a coworker or enemy got blown to pieces, so he grabbed the hand and went up to his coworker asking if he needed a hand. As much as I love that joke, it is immensely disturbing he would lie about that. Story 10. This one guy I met on a screenwriting course. On our first session as a group, people had gathered, but no one was speaking. So being slightly outgoing on occasion, I initiated a lighthearted group introduction, and people picked up and joined in happily. There was one guy, he just felt off the whole time. Like sometimes you just feel a disturbance and that someone is not all right to be around. There was another clearly very autistic member who was quite nice but spoke about social struggles as the sessions went on. Before one session, I caught the weird guy talking the autistic guy's ear off about different drugs like hardcore stuff and how he has tried it all and has connections to violent gangs in America. Anytime he could contribute to class ideas, he always spoke of his love for body horror, the more depraved the better, how he knows how these violent gang members operate intimately, and basically just got to inform us all of all these sick ideas he had for horror films. After about 7 classes, he erupted at the teacher for no reason, threatening her, telling her what he thought of her and the works. A few of us tried to calm him down, but he was seeing red and stormed out. They banned him and refunded him all his money. They never do that because he felt like such a threat. I have no doubt he was not a well man and was actually very dangerous. Story 11. Cy, my father. He had a rough life to be sure, and never had the tools to be a decent human being. His mother was married 11 times. He left school in the 6th grade, was using drugs not long after. He took breaks from harming us when mom was not home to play his games. You know, stuff like pounding a hammer around our feet while giggling, dance over and over. You know, the knife and finger thing where you try to speed stab between your fingers? We got that too. Told us he was teaching us not to flinch. And then there was the sexual abuse. My poor sister got that the worst. Things finally ended when I came downstairs in the middle of the night and interrupted him choking my mom. See, he had been harming us all, but we were all trying to hide it from each other. I became frighteningly good at hiding stuff I'm going through. He ended up marrying the woman he had been cheating with. They thought it would be funny to move into the house 1 block behind us, same street number. Eventually, mom sold our home, and guess who bought it? Story 12. When I was in high school in a small-ish town, there was a girl who was definitely the weird kid in my class, and I usually paid no mind if someone was considered weird, because a lot of my friends were, and still are, to be honest, so-called weirdos, but I just got the strangest vibe from her. I felt kind of bad about it because I felt like I was rude judging her like that, but the vibes were just off from her, so I never cared to get to know her. Fast forward a year later, and my roommate let us call her. Di gets a call from her mom freaking out. Di's mom tells her not to get rides from anyone except me or her family for a while, even if they are Di's friends. She asks what is going on and why that is, and her mom says that her friend's niece was just murdered. Turns out the weird girl from my class was part of the group that murdered her. It was a group of, I believe, 3 people who murdered this girl. Her name was Cynthia Hoffman, and it was horribly cruel. They bound her and harmed her and dumped her body in a river at a popular trail. They tried to make it seem like she went missing, leaving Cynthia's belongings at a park, but they were soon found out. They did this because some man from a different state was grooming the girl from my class on Facebook claiming to be a millionaire. He was not, he was just a mega loser. The girl from my class had recorded and sent inappropriate material to this man, and he offered a sum of, if I recall correctly, a couple $1 million to harm someone and send proof. Once this all came out, I did not feel bad for judging her and thinking she was weird when we had class together. I think I could just pick up on the fact that something was fundamentally wrong with her and was too young to know to trust my gut like that. Story 13. One time I was working at a lab in my university as a student employee. While I was wiping down the desks, I walked by a table full of students. One guy looked at me and said to his friends he would like to assault me and loudly guessed I was Filipino or Guatemalan, and he has never slept with either before. I did not know how to react, so I kept cleaning and ignored them because I did not want to get fired, and I am 5'0", so I did not want to provoke him or his friends. I was at an art school and am brown, so I did not want to get blacklisted for being difficult by reporting. They kept talking and guessing my ethnicity and how they would like to hurt me. They eventually got bored and left after I stayed cleaning a table by other students. Absolutely terrifying. It was the dead glee in their eyes and that laugh that really sticks with me today. Edit just for more background over this incident. This involved 5 students, 3 men and 2 women who were talking about wanting to assault me. I am just a really short dude. Absolutely terrifying, and I do not think I really let myself think of this incident as anything but funny, primarily because they never successfully guessed my ethnicity. But obviously, this was a very, very bad situation, surrounded by very, very bad people. Good news is I am okay and graduated now. Story 14. Long ago, I was inspecting a peanut factory as a supply-side auditor and got partnered with a brunette woman who appeared about mid-30s. I was the new guy and she had about a decade more experience than me. Immediately, she seemed unfriendly and demanding. Not the first auditor I met like that. We agreed to take separate cars to the audit site. She made a point that she wants to do this quickly and be out by 3 p.m. Seemed like a weird request since that meant we could not be as thorough. Honestly, this factory was pretty terribly run, but it was in a red state and they tend to treat their employees bad. At one point, I interviewed a young girl about my age who said she was assaulted on the job. She was actually crying as she told me this. Being new person that I was, I went to my partner because I was not sure what this meant. When I asked to speak with her, she gave me the dirtiest look, like as if she was angry at me. I explained to her the situation, and she gave me a snarky response how everyone can hear the girl crying, and it was annoying. I had no idea how to interpret this, so I just asked her if we should bring this up to management. She seriously scolded me, "Do you want to do more work?" I was really put off by her attitude and callousness. I told her we should investigate this more, and she said, "I can do that, but I will be doing it alone." Later, towards the end of the meeting, when we are talking about how the audit went to the managers, I decided to bring up the assault. The look my partner gave me still lingers in my mind. It was like she genuinely wanted to harm me. The managers mentioned that they were aware of the employee, but the area she was in had no cameras, and there was no one to corroborate either story. So they ended up switching her shifts so that the two employees work a completely different schedule in completely separate parts of the building. Because there was no evidence of anything, I could not really do anything. After the audit, I remember she looked at her watch and it was 4 p.m. She shot me one more dirty look before we left the factory. To this day, she is probably the most callous person I ever met. According to my friend who works at the company and has worked with this brunette lady, she apparently talks about cheating on her husband constantly and has apparently admitted to just not really giving a care about people in general. I am pretty sure this woman was a sociopath. Story 15. I have had the misfortune of having a few people in my inner circles that have been disturbing creeps and narcissists, but this is the worst one I know of. Let us call this one Bob. Bob was a regular at the local hobby store and played card games in the same circles as my friends. He was weird and pervy and nerdy, but nothing super obviously scary or dangerous. Like he would hold eye contact with girls' chests when talking to them. There were rumors he would get escorts when he would go to conventions. That kind of thing. He was not a friend, but just kind of some dude in the scene that I would occasionally hang out with in groups. I had a boyfriend at the time and we were on and off, and one time he ditched seeing a movie with me, so I went with Bob as some immature attempt to make him jealous. He was not threatened for good reason. Bob fell asleep and snored loudly not even halfway through. He then suggested dinner, which was a bar at 4 p.m. that was not serving food yet, and him convincing the bartender to go halfsies on a pizza delivery. Not impressive. So far, this is just a pathetic dude, right? Well, fast forward several years. My now ex moved to a different state for work, and Bob got hired at the same company. Eventually, my ex moves back. We are on friendly terms and catch up. I ask about Bob. Well, turns out Bob got addicted to meth and went off the deep end. I was given a link to a court case where Bob got arrested for trying to exchange meth to another creep in order to have access to that guy's very young minor daughter for the worst reasons you can think of. The signs were there, but holy hell did that man escalate. Makes my skin crawl. Story 16. I have been pretty lucky to not be involved with truly disturbing people, but there were some bad incidents and stories. Saw an elementary school friend kicked in the ribs by his father. Friend's mother narcissist. Worst birthday party ever was at her home. Apparently seeing her son and friends having a good time was not okay. During and after the divorce, she was actively trying to punish her ex-husband. She used their kids as a weapon, saying terrible things about him to them and making it nearly impossible to let them have a good relationship with their father. My friend lives across the country now. One son went kinda nuts and the daughter jumped off a bridge. College housemate. He enjoyed messing with other people. One time he bragged about making friends with a diagnosed schizophrenic and then stealing his medicine. I hope it was not true, but would not put it past him. Former friend of family who committed fraud and stole money from other friends. One person lost their house as a result of investing with this person. Not someone I knew, but my parents told of a former person in their social circle before I was born. That person was a psychiatrist who recorded their client sessions, played them for other people, and then laughed and mocked their clients. The only time I have ever heard my father call someone evil. Story 17. When I was in United States Marine Corps boot camp in the spring of 2000, I had a guy in our platoon, Sheldon, who was a physical fitness stud, did all the push-ups and so on. Drill instructors loved him until the second month of boot camp, when we had to pass a multiple-choice history of the Marine Corps test. The drill instructors went over the test and literally told us the answers. All we had to do was memorize them and then take the test the next day. The night before the test, I had fire watch 2 hours guarding the barracks while everyone sleeps. Everybody is asleep except Sheldon. This kid is awake, mumbling to himself, saying something weird about Marines and how he wanted to join, but nobody will let him, and that history is not important. I tell him to go to sleep. We have a test tomorrow, but it should be easy since the drill instructors gave us the answers. My watch ends, I go to bed, wake up, and Sheldon is missing from our platoon. I ask the drill instructors, they tell me the only thing I should worry about is passing this test. 2 days prior to graduation, the drill instructors tell us that they had to remove Sheldon from our platoon and eventually kick him out of the United States Marine Corps because on that night when he would not go to sleep, they found a diary in his locker that basically said he was going to harm all of us when we got to the rifle range because we thought he was dumb. Story 18. I used to work at a local CVS type of store in the Tower District in Fresno. I worked in a payment center office. My supervisor had her desk in the office due to how much cash we handled. We had a regular come in every month who was fairly charismatic. He kept trying to get her on a date, but she was polite and said no every month. I saw him all the time hanging around outside when I would have a smoke break on the side of the building. Genuinely a nice, happy guy. One day shortly after coming home from work, I flipped on the television and I clicked through the news stations, but cable always had a slight delay from landing on a channel, then clicking next. I happened to catch Cable News Network for a brief second say we are here in Fresno, which took me by surprise. I flipped back and there was a whole special weapons and tactics team in front of a house in the Tower District. They had the ghetto bird up flying around and several local news stations reporting. Then they said the resident's name, Marcus Wesson. My jaw dropped, then they showed a picture of him confirming it was who I thought it was. What came of that whole situation made me sick. If you click the link or do not want to, after reading this, be aware he was a mass murderer and child rapist, convicted of 9 counts of first-degree murder and 14 sex crimes, including the rape and molestation of his underage daughters. My supervisor told us the next day that at one point she did consider an afternoon coffee meetup with him, but was glad she never acted on it. Story 19. A substitute teacher at my former high school. I had him as a substitute once, and he often supervised the school's resource center and whatnot. He also substituted for academic-level math, chemistry, biology, and so on. He seemed like a nice guy, although he did come across as a bit introverted and socially awkward. I thought nothing of it. 2 years after I graduated high school, a news release was posted on social media by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and it said that they had arrested a man for possession and distribution of child pornography. They released the man's name, and it initially did not ring any bells in my mind. I then learned that the man was a substitute teacher for my province's public school board, so I went on Google and found a LinkedIn profile under his name. I clicked on the profile, and when I saw his picture, my mouth dropped open. I was like, holy shit, this man taught at my high school. He ended up being charged 3 more times, once for making child pornography and twice for sexually touching 2 different elementary school students. He pleaded guilty to all except for one charge. He is still waiting to enter a plea on the last charge. As for the other charges that he did plead guilty to, the agreed statement of facts were very disturbing. In online chats, he bragged about sexually touching young kids. I felt so disgusted to know that I was once in the same vicinity of this man without realizing how messed up he was. Story 20. My sister, she is a pathological liar and probably some sort of psychopath or sociopath. She invented an entire life for herself and faked her own death twice. Anything that she tells anyone about her life is probably a lie. And the woman is like Jim Jones. People believe everything she says, and not only do they believe it, they will defend her like it is their job or something. Even when confronted with the truth about her, her friends will literally fight someone who says anything that does not agree with whatever my sister told them. I do not know how she convinces people that everything that comes out of her mouth is the gospel truth. She has been doing it for 40 years, though. Something is working for her. Very few people have ever questioned her. Anyone who even thinks about questioning her better be goddamn careful. They are going to be in for a world of trouble if she finds out that they are questioning anything she says. She has done some crazy things in retaliation against people who she deems to be a threat to her invented life. I could go on all day about the crazy, illegal, borderline illegal, and immoral things she has done, and she does not have an ounce of remorse about any of it. Story 21. When I worked at a psych hospital, my very first day, I assessed this guy who was schizophrenic. He desperately wanted to be put in patient he had been before. The family did not speak English and could not afford his medication. His dad was in denial of the schizophrenia. The young man was fully psychotic at that point, but anyone who has worked with people in psychosis knows sometimes people even in psychosis will find a way to communicate. They want to be impatient. He looked at me and said, "Please do not let my dad take me home." I told him, "Do not worry, we are holding you." After a few weeks, he was discharged, but I knew he would not get the regular medication he needed due to finances and cultural beliefs. Years later, it was in the paper that someone stole a car and drove it into the mall through the outskirts store and into the mall. Just cruising along at a few miles an hour, not trying to run anyone over. Just completely out of it. He was arrested for terrorism and got a whole slew of charges. It was the guy I had seen a few years prior. His face was all distorted and scary looking. A lot of people do not realize that people in full-blown psychotic episodes physically look different. I knew in my gut something was off with this guy. But the saddest part is that he seemed to be aware of it and did not want to be this way. He was not a sociopath, he just had uncontrolled mental illness. The interviews on the news with his family saying he did so well when on medication broke my heart. Story 22. My former best friend. She has bipolar and borderline personality disorder. One night she went into psychosis and started slicing up her arm like a Thanksgiving ham. Then the screaming started. I was furiously dialing her mother on every phone number I had, including her mother's husband's phone number. Of course, her parents did not answer. We got her in the car and she kept grabbing the steering wheel as I followed behind in a separate car. We finally get her to her mom's house. I was pounding on the door and her mom just casually opens the door, and I told her what happened. Her mom was nonchalant about it, like this sort of thing happened all the time. My friend was acting just like Aileen Wuornos all through the ordeal. I spent the next day cleaning up blood. Story 23. I have this distant cousin who I always thought was creepy. He moved to the same town I grew up in, and he would hang out with my dad occasionally and come to cookouts and so on. I always thought something was off about him, even when I was a kid. I never wanted to be alone with him. One of my only vivid memories from being a teenager is when I was 13, and my grandma died, and he came and basically tried to cuddle with me on the couch, telling me it would be okay. I got out of there immediately, ran in my room, and locked my door. I did not tell my parents because I was too young to understand how weird that was. When I was 17, my grandpa lived next door, died, and my dad found him. My dad could barely speak. I had just finished basic cardiopulmonary resuscitation and first aid. The man was 300 pounds, so I certainly was not going to be able to get him on the ground to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation. I called 911. Obviously, emergency medical services comes. All of the family comes over, including him. My best friend came over later that night to give me some company, as I was still in complete shock. We went outside to smoke a cigarette, and he was at my grandpa's house with my uncle doing the same. He did not realize my friend and I could hear him, do not know if he even saw us because we had the porch lights off. He says to my uncle, whom I am very close with, that he wants to have a threesome with me and my mom once I turned 18. Needless to say, my uncle legitimately kicked his ass. We could see it perfectly because the porch lights were on at Grandpa's. Uncle goes inside and gets my dad, who proceeds to do the same. He scrambled out of there black and blue and was never invited to a family event again. Story 24. My friend's sister dated this guy that was pretty angry and abusive. Sister was 1 year older than us, but he was 5 years older. Once she fled a fight with him by going to the bowling alley we were at. I think I was in 8th grade then. Eventually he showed up and we did not even notice until he marched all the way up to us and pushed me over to get to her. Cops were called, we had to leave, and so on. When she officially broke up with him, she hid for a while. He showed up to their house and put a gun to my friend's head, threatening to kill her if she did not reveal her location. Nothing thankfully came of that aside from my friend being completely traumatized. He had a tendency to hang out behind my high school even though he had graduated before I even started. Always had some younger girlfriend he was picking up. He went to the military at some point and was dishonorably discharged. There are plenty more stories about his violence and cops getting called on him, but I do not know details as I stayed far from him as possible, so I will not get into that. When he showed up in the news, I was unfortunately not surprised, but I was devastated about all the chances it felt like we had to lock him away. take away his guns, and so on. Anyways, on his last day alive, he hogtied his wife and locked her in their home, then drove to her family's church and killed a bunch of people. I refused to look him up. His face is nightmare fuel, but I think it was over 20, nearly 30 people. It was the Sutherland Springs church shooting. Story 25, my couch surfing host about 8 years ago. It started badly as we were supposed to stay 2 nights at his place, but he canceled the first night a day or two before our arrival. We had to pay for a hotel. We were poor and students, that is why we were using couch surfing and not hotels initially. Everything was weird that night. We arrived at the address he gave us, but we could not find his place. All we could see is a massage place where you cannot see anything inside. It was located in the Red District of Hamburg, Germany. So not sure it was an actual massage place, but probably a different type of adult pleasure establishment, which would not be surprising in this neighborhood or street. In the end, his place was actually the massage place. It was a normal apartment from the inside, at least for the parts we saw. But weird noises came from the basement. He insisted we go downstairs to help him with the bedsheets. I refused. I said I hurt my knee and cannot use the stairs, which was true. I hurt my knee during this trip. Maybe it was just washing machine noises, maybe not, we'll never know. He kept saying my friend was a bitch and calling her other names. He was blaming us for not paying him for the accommodation. He kept repeating that the last guest from Airbnb did pay him. Obviously, Airbnb app have to pay for your accommodation. Couchsurfing app, free accommodation, at least back then. We were the worst guests he ever had. We went grocery shopping to buy something to eat because he said we cannot order. I am a chef. I do not eat other people's cuisine. I was like, okay, do not care. It is cheaper to cook something quick. So I am okay with that. Once on the metro, he insisted to change our route to go to his friend house outside Hamburg. We felt a bit unsafe with him, so we said no. Let us stick to the plan going to Little and go back to his place. On the metro ride back, he offers us some ice cream that he pulled out of his pocket. He was storing ice cream in his pocket with no packaging. Then once at home, he cooked his Lidl pizza on a waffle machine, remember? He said he is a chef. And he kept blaming us for making a mess because the pizza was dripping off the machine onto the counter. How was it our fault? Me and my friend were eating a tomato salad. He told us his roommate was crazy. We did not know or meet this third roommate and might be loud during the night. Indeed, all night long she was screaming and laughing and singing. All of this in a devil way, like in a horror movie. We were supposed to leave his place at 8 a.m. to catch our bus. We left at 5 a.m., being really quiet to not wake him up. Finished our sleep on the bus. Many other weird things and talks happened during that night, but I will keep this comment short by not writing them. Also, days later, he left a comment on my couchsurfing profile saying only positives, nice to meet them, had nice talks. Story 26. This guy I briefly dated years ago. He was delusional. Told me he owned a magazine and had previously worked for GQ. He went so far as to have a fake website for his pretend magazine. He told me he was going on a trip and asked me to come, so I said sure and booked the time off. I had no idea he was delusional yet. He has his assistant send me the itinerary that looked like a boarding pass. He did not have an assistant. It was not a ticket or a boarding pass. It was him pretending to be his assistant. Then mysteriously, the trip never happened. He tried to convince me he was 5'9", but he was an inch taller than me and I am 5'4". He was adamant he was 5'9". I did not care. I just thought it was so weird he would lie to my face about something I could literally see. The final straw was he was at my place one night and went out to run an errand. I came home and he was in my bathroom, shaving his head, and there was blood smeared all over the door and walls. I found 2 empty wine bottles. I had been gone for maybe an hour. I tried to get him to leave, and he would not. He assaulted me, but I managed to get him out of the bathroom and myself locked in and called the cops. 5 cops came. My bathroom was by the front door in this place, so I heard the shuffling of people in the hall, so I managed to sneak out the bathroom and get the front door open. 1 cop grabbed me and pulled me into the hall, and they stormed in. No idea what happened, but I heard a struggle, and they took him out in cuffs. When I went back and my couch was tipped over, and living room was a disaster, they asked me what I wanted to do, and I was so freaked out I did not press charges, just asked that they take him to the hospital. He was put on a psychiatric hold. There were a bunch of other weird lies this guy had told me too, like that he had rented a really nice office building downtown for his magazine, that he went to New York City for a week when he never even left. He also stole $300 from my coat pocket. After him, I basically got to a point where I was like, you know what? I think I am cool if I never date again and die alone. But I met my husband 8 months later. Story 27, I took a road trip from Illinois to Oregon. When I was in my 20s, I only brought my 5-year-old with me. We went to the Tillamook Air Museum. It was so cool. But the whole time I had the absolute worst feeling in my gut. This guy kept following us, asking if I was alone. We were literally the only ones in this huge old air hangar that they turned into a museum. I lied and said my dad was meeting us later. We would think we lost him, then he would be right behind us. I just internally had this screaming feeling that he was a serial killer. At one point, I even took my phone out before going outside and saying, okay, yeah, Dad, I am on my way. I told the lady in the museum store that this guy was creepy. He came outside and just stared at us getting in the car. I truly feel like I escaped being murdered. Every once in a while, I look up missing people or serial murders in that area. I have not found anything yet. It has been 10 years, and I still get shivers thinking about it. He did not do anything to us, but it was one of the most creeped out I have ever been. So glad we got away. Story 28. Many years ago, right when home computers and inkjet printers were first available for home use, we had an information technology guy that would come to our office for any repairs. He was just so unsettling and creepy, and he really attached himself to one of the women I worked with, who was a very petite young lady. The two of us would talk after he would leave about how bizarre he was and how unsettled he made us feel. I have always enjoyed technology and photography, so he was sharing with me how he would take photographs of his stepdaughter and print them out in 4 panels and tape them together to have a larger image to frame. I was quite intrigued with this, so we chatted about it a number of times. About a year later, he goes missing, and the news comes out that he was assaulting his stepdaughter and creating child assault material. We also found out that he was a cross-dresser, so for the longest time they did not know if he would be presenting as a man or a woman while he was on the run. The woman I worked with was very unsettled during the whole time he was missing for fear that he would potentially come after her. They ended up finding his body hanging in a tree about a month and a half later. Probably the best end of the story. Story 29, I worked as an occupational therapist in home health. Called and made an appointment for evaluation, then later that day arrived at a rundown long-term hotel. The dude had been hospitalized for cardiac issues, so I was there to help outfit him with equipment for energy conservation, that sort of thing. He had an incredibly flat effect and spoke in a monotone mid-level yell. His bed was a bare mattress that had been slept on for so long it appeared to be covered in a thick layer of dark grease. The rest of his housekeeping was equally repellent. I sat in a lone plastic chair at the end of the bed, and he sat on the edge of the bed between myself and the door to the bedroom. There was no seating at all in the kitchen, which happened to be my only exit. I had just really gotten started on the evaluation when I got an email on my phone that had a red flag. Then my phone rang, and it was one of the social workers on our team. I told him I had to quickly grab the call. Then I sat there making eye contact with him as she explained to me that he had been imprisoned multiple times for assault and violence against young children, but also violent offenses against female caregivers or workers. The most recent, he had punched a female staff member in a group home directly in the face 5 or 6 times unprovoked. She was injured quite badly. Fielding the phone call while he sat there watching me was extremely frightening. I ended the call and began to craft my exit strategy. He was literally sitting between me and the door. Only a minute or two later, he began to explain to me how a friend of his was actively assaulting an adolescent boy in a local apartment complex. I decided to stay a while longer, and I acted really stupid and tried to pry identifying details from him about the kids in question and the offender. I stayed for a good 40 minutes, trying to work my interrogation into my evaluation. I was careful not to talk back to him in any way, and I am pretty sure by the time I worked toward my exit strategy, he thought we were pals. I set up our next visit, zipped my bag, and left. I pulled into a parking a quarter mile down the road and called the police, telling them all the details I had learned about the boy, and obviously never went back there again. I still cannot believe I was not told until I was sitting there with him how dangerous he was. It still makes my skin crawl. Story 30, I was working on a small island in the South Pacific many years ago. I had a customer at the store I worked at that came to me often because I had knowledge about his job welding. After knowing the guy for several months, I was told his history. He was from a different country and came to the one we were in for work. One night, while hammered drunk, he challenged a martial arts teacher to a fight. The teacher beat him up pretty good. Later that night, my customer broke into the teacher's house and cut his head off with a machete. He went to jail there, which involves being let out to work or anything from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day. I think he served maybe a decade at most before he was released. He was restricted from drinking any alcohol once he was released. One night I ran into him at a bar. He was hammered. I said hi and asked him how his day went. He replied something like, "It was a tough day," to which I replied something like, "I know how that is." He then said, kinda confrontational, "No man, you do not know. You do not know." Then stared down eye to eye for about a minute before I excused myself and went home. I cannot say I slept well that night. Story 31. The couple we bought our first house from were very creepy. They were selling because they were getting divorced, and she was close to being foreclosed on. Met them both at the closing, and oddly enough, he would not let go of her hand. She was also at the house during the walkthrough, which she should not have been, but we did not know any better, and followed us through the house. Once the house was completely empty, on the walls were poems or death threats that he wrote to her. They were kind of painted over, but you could clearly read it. There were even threats written on back of doors, all things you could hide when we first viewed the house. Turns out she was a school bus driver that was having an affair with a high schooler who took her bus, and he apparently was psychotic. 6 months after we closed on the house, I read in the paper that she had passed away, not quite sure of the circumstances. They had 3 kids, not sure what happened to them. We have since sold the house, but for the 8 years we owned it, we would find strange and creepy messages in weird places. Story 32. My ex and I went to Pensacola for a vacation. I stopped at a Circle K for beer, and there was a homeless guy outside. His gaze almost stopped me in my tracks. Beautiful ice blue eyes, but hard, a mixture of hate and regret, maybe envy. I cannot put my finger on it. At the very least, the guy had seen things. My spidey senses said he had done things, and there he was in Florida on the lam. It was hot and humid, and I was just chilled to the bone by this dude. I worked with a guy with this creepy obsession with cops being a cop. Guns, any news about police violence, and an observed compulsion to steal. I did not trust the guy, so I went, "Keep your friends close and your enemies closer." I gave him rides home a few times, but he would never let me drop him off in front of his house. One night I was giving him a ride home, but I had to stop for some gifts for a birthday party which was coming up. He out of the blue told me that his brother was forcing him to steal things and went on about how their mother died, left his brother the house, and hinted that his brother would abuse him in some way if my co-worker would not do as he was told, which apparently included shoplifting and stealing. Oh, brother. At a completely different job, I had the weirdest district manager. I mean, it was cool in some ways having him as our boss's boss, but he had this weird laugh and used it for everything. Both he and the laugh were actually pretty affable at first, but it did not take long to kind of get weird. The trope was that you could be the cop knocking on his door to inform him that his mother had just died, and he would use that laugh. It is extreme, but if it had been a true story, I would have been surprised, yet also definitely not shocked. There were cocaine use rumors, just rumors. There was definitely something off about the guy, so again, I would be surprised, not shocked. I worked with a girl with an unusually high intimate drive, and that is cool, go get it, girl. She was always kind of a bit fun and loudmouth. Unusual but fun, I had not really flagged her as anything but highly confident and independent until she just freely shared a story about being an assault victim and casually shrugging it off as not even being assault, while saying she did not consent and will not message the guy. I was just disturbed by this because now I am seeing someone with trauma issues and a confident front, and she is in denial. I am not disturbed in a way which is repulsing. Now I am disturbed that I have reason to believe she has had some very bad, possibly criminal things done to her, not just in that admission, but in the past. And I cannot lead a horse to the water. Story 33, I knew a guy. I am not going to say who he was to me because identity reasons. He is dead now, which was honestly a relief when I heard. He was a complete pathological liar, incredibly charming. All of his friends loved having him around and hanging with him. I say friends because they did not know the first thing about him. I do not think anyone really did. I knew him for 10 years and found out that nearly everything he told me about his life was a lie. He even claimed boastfully that the first time he had sex was when he was 7. He was trying to one-up his friends who had experiences from their early teens with others of the same age. He bragged that he was having sex with his sister at 7. Then it turned into she was doing stuff with him while she was supposed to be babysitting him because she was older. Come to find out, none of it was true. She never babysat him. There was proof she was living with other relatives in a different state at the time this supposedly happened. People like that make you question your own sanity, because you know they are lying to you, but they are also lying to everyone else and telling different lies. It is how they eventually get caught by some people. But they are always going to have people snowed, and those people will believe everything they say. You have to walk completely away from anyone close to them because that stuff is like tar. Story 34, after my mom got out of an abusive relationship when I was 5 or 6, she got together with a friend from work who seemed like a good fit. My younger brother was notoriously difficult, and he fell asleep in the guy's lap within 30 minutes of him coming over before they got together, so my mom thought having him around would make everyone safer, etc. I, for whatever reason, hated him. I never liked him. I just thought that there was something wrong with him. He did not fit with us, did not deserve my respect. Even when he sat in court to support me as I testified against one of my abusers at 12, there was just something I could not stand about him. As a little kid, I had no idea why I did not like him. And about 2 years later, we moved, and the dynamic between my mom and him rapidly declined. He would start fights with her a lot of the times over something stupid. She was desperately trying to be the breadwinner while dealing with the trauma from her previous marriage, and while she was struggling with drinking, he would bring myself and my brother into their fights by telling us things when we were alone with him. He threatened to leave constantly pretty much every single fight that escalated to yelling. He would make sure if he was not happy, nobody else in the house was happy. It was like a cloud hung over the house, weighing everyone down. He would slam cabinets and yell if we did not listen to him when he felt like cleaning, because everyone else was supposed to clean with him. He would pout if we did family events he did not want to attend, going as far as to play a handheld game to avoid talking to my grandmother and aunts, etc. He would bully my brother and I relentlessly, me about my weight, food I eat, and general hobbies like singing. He would hit and beat my brother because he did not want to deal with his autistic meltdowns, and we found out later that the physical abuse escalated as my brother got older. Side note, my mom also started having random allergic reactions that escalated over a period of about 7 to 10 years. She would wake up with hives and take Benadryl so she could feel better, but it would make her pass out for hours, sometimes all day. The reactions got so bad that she needed to go to the hospital a few times. She saw multiple doctors, including dermatologists and other specialists, and nobody could figure out what was going on with her. So after a while, it became a new normal. It was not uncommon for her to wake up swollen and unable to see once a week, and as long as her throat was not swollen, she was fine. In hindsight, I realize now that he started looking at me differently and treating me differently around 15 or so. But it did not come fully into picture until 2 days after I graduated high school. There were moments he would stare at me or ask for a hug. Once when I was 13 or 14, he came to me crying, saying he could not handle my mom and asked to hug me, and he squeezed me too tight for too long. He started hanging on to me when we would go to the water park when I was 15 to 17 and swim in the lazy river, his hands wrapping almost around my chest. I was creeped out in these instances, but I told myself I was worrying too much because of what I had been through with other men. But then I graduated high school. He decided to crawl into my bed one morning, talk to me about his fantasies, then proceed to coerce and assault me. He convinced me afterwards that I wanted it because my body responded, and that led to me keeping this trauma secret for nearly 4 years. When I found out he was cheating on my mother and manipulating my brother into keeping that secret from her, all while being in therapy with her to work on their marriage, I could not keep the secret anymore. A part of me knew that what he did was wrong, And while I was already a victim, I was convinced that nobody would believe me and that I actively played a part in it. When I came clean to my brother, he told me we had to tell our mom. She believed me, immediately kicked him out. They got a divorce, and we have gone through hell healing. What we have over the last 5 years, about 3 to 5 months after she kicked him out, we were deep cleaning the house, and my mom found a jar of coconut oil hidden in the laundry room. It was very weird because, 1, nobody in the house uses it. 2, it was in the laundry room, and 3, my mom is allergic to coconut, and that is why nobody in the house uses coconut oil. There was a period I tried using it on my hair in high school, but that jar was used and thrown away years ago at that point. So the only thing that made sense was that it was his, and then we remembered that coincidentally my mom had not had a single allergic reaction since he was kicked out, and she still has not to this day. He is still walking free, nothing happened to him. And last we heard, he found a new woman with an 18-year-old daughter. My mom messaged her to warn her, but she never messaged back. He is one of the people I gladly wish pain and suffering upon. He is one of the people that convinced me that evil is real, and some people just are bad people. They do not deserve forgiveness or empathy, and that nobody cares about victims when they are adults. Monsters are monsters. Do not give them a chance to get close to you if you feel that gut warning you. Story 35. Sadly, my oldest niece. She just turned 16, but she's been doing disturbing things for years. When she was 12, she was staying with me and confided in me that she daydreams about killing her family and the thrill she gets from tossing her little brother around. He was 4 at the time. I called my brother, her dad, immediately after they left to share what she said, and he just sighed and said, "Yeah, that is something we are used to," and that she had been in therapy for it. I had a feeling ever since that she would eventually do something more sinister. Cut to January 2024, and my gem of a stepdad passed away from cancer. Naturally, we are all devastated, but according to my niece, no one is more devastated than her, not even my mom. Unfortunately, only my brother was able to make it to the funeral, even though he had gotten hotel rooms for his wife and kids and me, so we could at least make the most of the time together. Why? Because my niece had been plotting for the entire week to strangle her younger sister in her sleep. The school caught wind of it and reported it, thank God. Would she have done it? Who knows? But I shudder to think about what could have happened if the girls were in my hotel room and I woke up to see one of them gone. I am deaf and a heavy sleeper, and they know this. My niece has been in and out of facilities ever since her stunt last January. She takes no responsibility or accountability for her actions, and even more chillingly, keeps calling her younger sister her best friend and does not understand why she is scared of her. Both of her siblings are rightfully terrified to be around her. When she is home, everyone has to sleep with locks on their doors. Attention must be about her, or she will find a way to make it about her. When her sister was going to camp this summer, she burned her neck with a curling iron on purpose. She has tried to set their house on fire twice. She got kicked out of a facility for threatening to kill her roommate. She steals from anyone and everyone. I could go on, but you get the picture. My poor brother and sister-in-law are at a loss as to how to handle her, which is why she is currently in a program that she will likely be in until she is 18 and then be turned over to the state if nothing changes. She regularly expresses that she wishes her siblings were gone so that she could be the only child. It is very disturbing. She is too young to be diagnosed with anything, but she is definitely showing signs of borderline and antisocial personalities, or at least something on the dark triad. My heart breaks for how her mind works and the toll it takes on everyone around her, but she is dangerous. She can be very charming and sweet, but it is all an act. I love her dearly, but I truly believe that if left alone with her siblings, she would do something nefarious. I have seen the glint in her eye when she talks about hurting them. It is chilling.